Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Toolkit, brought to you here by the 360 Sports Network. I'm James Dotson, here to bring you some cool new tools when it comes to your fantasy football league. Whether you're an owner, whether you're a commissioner, we have all the tools you need to make you be a better fantasy football player, owner, and just basic fan of the game. What we're working on this week are some different kinds of tools that you can use as a commissioner of your league to kind of spice up your league, make it a little bit different. So each day we're going to talk about some ways that you maybe can change your league around in terms of the format of the league, the scoring setup, maybe the playoffs, just kind of some extra ways to spice up, whether it's a dynasty league you've run for many years or just a brand new league that you're starting with your buddies. A couple of these things can help you out and make your league be an unforgettable one and everybody's favorite league to come back to every year. What we're going to focus on today are some different ways that you can run the playoffs, because you know what? It's the same in almost every league. Usually it's a 10 to 12 team league. Usually in a 10 team league you're probably having 6 teams make the playoff. In a 12 team league, maybe 6, but probably 8 making the playoffs. So, in that normal format with 6 teams, you got the top 2 who will get a bye, and then you'll have, the 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 play each other, and, your typical tournament format. So you're going to have, 3 rounds of playoffs, so usually weeks 14, 15, 16, because, we hate week 17, we don't want to have to deal with that. But anyway, you know how it works, and this is how every league is. And you know what? This can end up being a royal pain, because how often do you see a team that was pretty much undefeated all year have one bad week just at the wrong time, or a guy like Josh McCown for the Bears a couple years ago in the first round of the playoffs goes off crazy, and all of a sudden you have the number 1 seed losing to the number 8 seed. Or maybe the number 1 seed had a great week, but they played that Josh McCown team, and now they're out of the playoffs even though they had a great year. It can end up being a burden. So we have a couple of options that we can look at for how to make your playoffs just a little bit different, but at the same time, make it a little bit more fair and more telling of who actually should win your fantasy football championship. Because more often than not, the one who actually wins the championship is not the one who had the best team throughout the course of the year. So let's start right off of it. Here's your, option number 1 for something different. Let's say you have 6 teams make the playoffs. Again, normally the 1 and 2 seed would get a bye. I'm not doing that. I'm going to have the 1 seed play the 6 seed right away. 2 versus 5 and 3 versus 4. So again, best versus worst in terms of the playoffs. Now, I know what you're saying. There's only 3 winners. How can you have only 3 teams moving on to the next round? Well, here's the deal. The team that had the highest score but lost their game also advances, kind of like a wild card sort of deal. So you're going to have 3 teams that advanced as the winners of their team, and then the losing team with the highest score will also advance. It's your choice at this point. I would vote that the team with the highest seed ends up playing the wild card, and then the 2 middle seeds end up playing each other next in the next round. So now you're down to 4 teams, and you play those just like you normally would. So it ends up being that when the number 1 seed, for example, is usually how this works, the number 1 seed has an absolutely great week, but they end up losing because the 6th seed had an astronomically high week because their backup running back had 7 touchdowns. This gives that 1 seed a chance to redeem themselves and continue on because they still had a great week and deserve to continue in the game. Alright, here's option number 2. Very similar, except that we'll say this is a 12-team league. All 12 teams make the playoffs. I know that maybe that sounds weird because, okay, what's the regular season for then? Well, your seeding still is huge because it's going to be 1 versus 12, 2 versus 11, 3 versus 10, the whole way through, etc. So, again, 6 games going on, so 6 teams will advance. So that means that, again, 6 teams going on, you're going to have then 2 other teams, the 2 highest scoring losers, also advancing. So now you're down to your 8 teams left in the playoffs, and you're in your regular playoff format. So the only issue with this is that this ends up being a 4-week playoff format. So that's something to keep in mind as you're going through this in terms of how you're setting up your league and all that, that you're going to have 1 less regular season week and 1 more playoff week with this format. Okay, option number 3, again, very similar. I'm liking the idea of the second chance sort of stuff. We're going to say this is a 10-team league, or even it's a 12-team league, only the top 10 make playoffs. Same idea, 1 versus 10, 2 versus 9, 3 versus 8. So you have 5 teams advance, and then you have the one lucky loser again. The highest scoring loser also advances. So now again, you're down to 6 teams who are left in the playoffs, and you have... Then at this point, I would say go back to option 1. The only reason I don't like this format is that the way this works, you could actually have a team lose in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, advance both weeks, and then end up winning the entire league championship. So that's the only reason why I'm against this, but I really like the idea that, well, you know what? Still, though, if you score that high of points each week, you deserve to have a chance to win the championship no matter what happens, because the matchups, honestly, end up being the worst thing you could possibly have in terms of fantasy football. All right, option number 4. I told you I'm giving you lots of options. In this one, let's say that there are 8 teams in the playoffs. They're not having first-round matchups. Instead, just whatever 4 teams score the highest that week all advance. So this way you don't have that first round, quote-unquote bad beat of the 1 seed losing to the 8 seed. I think I like this one. The only issue is, of course, you make the playoffs, you want to be trash-talking your opponent. It's fun to do that trash-talking, but at the same time, like I said, when you see the 1 seed losing to a 8 seed who just had 1 lucky week, it ends up throwing you off. So I kind of like this, but at the same time, again, like option 3, I kind of don't like it. And then the final option, and this is probably the most common out of all the ones that I see, is the multi-week matchup option. And I think this is best for either the first round of the playoffs or the last round of the playoffs or all rounds of the playoffs. Again, the only issue is going to be here where you have how many weeks to work with in terms of your playoff matchups. The way this works, say there's only 4 teams in the playoffs. Well, you have 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, but instead of just the 1 week of who wins, you end up playing each other for 2 weeks, and you combine your scores over those 2 weeks to see who advances to the next round. Same thing with the championship, combine them for 2 weeks to see who makes it to the next round. The benefits of this, you can go right to week 17 because you have the multi-week thing, you have 2 different ways, you're not relying your championship based solely on what happens during that last week of the football season, so you're able to adjust your roster accordingly and all that good stuff. I really like this idea if you, even if you have, like, say, a 6 or 8 team playoff setup in your normal leagues right now. Here's what happens. You're playing for 3 weeks. Again, extend it, make it a 4-week playoff system. You can even make it so you stop at week 16. So you'd go weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, and you still have a very easy way to make it into your current format, and you're not exactly sacrificing anything. If nothing else, a 16 format, make those play-in games 1 week and make the next 2 matchups 2-week playoffs. You have all those weeks, especially if you're in a 12-team system, you only have 11 opponents to play. Your regular season could be done by week 11 if you really wanted it to be. I know it sounds early to start your playoffs, but at the same time, it's a different way to look at it, and maybe a better way to look at it, so you're not having an extra regular season matchup and then losing in very poor fashion to a crummy team that doesn't deserve it. So you can go with your regular formats that you see all over the place, or you can try some of these other formats, and you never know which one you're going to like best. So I would say, take a gander. If you're running a league, try one of them. See how it works, see if you like it. If not, you scrap it. It's 1 year. You can figure out some cool things with it, and hey, you never know. Sometimes that little bit of difference is what makes guys coming back each and every year. That's what I found in all my leagues. There's got to be some sort of gimmick, whether it's where you have the draft, how you have the draft, how you determine your lottery picks, do you have keepers, that sort of thing. Just how you set up the playoffs can make the difference between a league that everybody groans in when it's time for draft day and a league that everybody is messaging you and saying, hey, can't wait for your draft. I've called off work all around it because I can't wait to go and have a good time. Well, that's it for this edition of the Fantasy Football Toolkit. Again, we'll be giving you all sorts of commissioner tools throughout the course of a week. And of course, all throughout your fantasy football season, lots of little tools, gizmos, gadgets, and just plain old advice that can help make you a better fantasy player. I'm James Dotson for 3SN and the Toolkit. Have a great evening.